Hello and welcome everyone to the daily news analysis of 7th of December 2023। तो इम्पोर्टेंट आर्टिकल आज की जितने सारे हैं वन बाय वन देखते हैं। पहला जो है 114 सीट्स माइग्रेंट्स कोटा क्लियर्ड फॉर जम्मू एंड कश्मीर असेंबली। Then MP index reduction under the India is flawed. Navigating the US-China relationship, the role of Special Inquiry Committee of Parliament, an experiment in education at grassroots levels school in Bangladesh. Then India reminds Myanmar to return to federal democracy. Garba dance of Gujarat makes it to UNESCO list. Then food prices likely shot up in November. Google unveils Gemini AI tech trend to behave like humans. Then who is responsible for farming's impact on the environment? Then climate change is making the world sick. तो पहला जो आर्टिकल है 114 सीट्स माइग्रेंट कोटा क्लियर्ड फॉर जम्मू एंड कश्मीर असेंबली। The Lok Sabha on Wednesday passed the Jammu and Kashmir Recognition Amendment Bill 2023 and the Jammu and Kashmir Reservation Amendment Bill 2023, the former seeking to reserve seats for Kashmir migrants, people displaced from the Pakistan-occupied Kashmir POK and scheduled tribes in the yet-to-be constituted 114 seat Jammu and Kashmir Assembly. Responding to statement made by opposition members that abrogation of Article 370 of Constitution in Jammu and Kashmir could not put to an end to terrorism. Union Home Minister Amit Shah said that he had never made such a claim. He said a zero terror plan formulated 3 years ago will be 100% implemented by 2026 in the Jammu and Kashmir region. He said the reservation of seats for Kashmir migrants who were displaced from their own homes in 1990s will ensure that the voice of the community is heard loud and clear in the Jammu and Kashmir Assembly, and if any such crisis arises in future, they are able to stop it. The recognition bill increases the total number of seats in the Jammu and Kashmir Assembly from 107 to 114 with reservation of 9 seats for the scheduled tribes for the first time. It also empowers the Lieutenant Governor to nominate 3 members in the assembly, 2 from the Kashmir migrants community including 1 woman and the third member being a representative of people from POK who took refuge in India following the war with Pakistan in 1947, 1965 and 1971. The Jammu and Kashmir Reservation Bill seeks to replace the term weak and unprivileged classes social caste in Jammu and Kashmir Reservation Act 2004 to other backward classes as declared by Union Territory. The 2004 Act pertains to reservation in appointment and admission in professional institutions for the member of the scheduled castes, scheduled tribes and other socially educationally backward classes. Mr. Shah said that the opposition contention that the law cannot be amended as the Principal Act passed on August 5, 2019 is under challenge in the Supreme Court does not hold ground as the apex court never stayed the implementation of the act. He said there is status quo. Mr. Shah said former Prime Minister Jawaharlal Nehru made historical blunder by taking the Kashmir issue to the United Nations and agreeing to cease fire when the army was winning the war. Congress members walked out of the house as Mr. Shah blamed India's first Prime Minister. Mr. Shah said if Nehru had taken the right steps, a large chunk of territory would not have been ceded, and POK would have been a part of India. After their walkout, Biju Janata Dal leader Bhartruhari Mahatab mocked the Congress members, saying the Home Minister should also talk about the Himalayan blunder, a reference to Nehru's action leading up to the war with China in 1962. Mr. Shah was replying to a debate on the two bills passed by the Lok Sabha on Wednesday. Mr. Shah was responding to Congress members Adhir Ranjan Chaudhary's statement that through terror attacks have dipped in Kashmir Valley, such incidents have increased across Pir Panjal in Jammu region, which which have resulted in the killing of 23 security forces personnel between April and November 2023 alone. Mr. Shah said they are connecting terrorism with Article 370. Nobody said that after Article 370 is gone, terrorism will stop in Kashmir. I had said that after Article 370 is scrapped, there is going to be a sharp drop in spread of separatist ideologies. The next article है government needs latitude to make peace, says CJI. Nothing that the government should be given leeway if a compromise is necessary to save the nation. Chief Justice of India D.Y. Chandrachud said on Wednesday that the Assam Accord of 1985 and the new citizenship regime which followed in the wake might have been an adjustment reached by Rajiv Gandhi government to claim the waves of violent anti-immigrant protests that rolled over the northeastern states for years that threatened national peace. You must give the government that latitude. Even today, there are states in the northeast affected by insurgency and violence. Chief Justice Chandrachud, heading a constitution bench, observed the bench was hearing a series of petitions filed by indigenous people from Assam which have challenged Section 6A of the Citizenship Act of 1955. The petitioner, represented by senior advocate Syam Devan, claimed the provision became a beacon for more foreign infiltration into Assam, leading to the destruction of the local cultural identity not justified. Mr. Devan said a justification that there was a violent political agitation leading to a political settlement was not sufficient basis to single out Assam for implementing an entirely new citizenship regime under Section 6A. Illegal immigration into Assam has been rewarded with the benefits of Indian citizenship. Mr. Diwan submitted. Obviously, every compromise made is never perfect. The state of Assam was riven with stripes at the time. Does the government arrive at this compromise to bring peace to Assam or allow the strife-ridden state to continue in its path of violence merely because the compromise may discriminate among states? These are vexed issues. Any solution found can be an inexact one, the CJI asked Mr. Diwan, but senior lawyer argued that Section 6A was discriminatory in itself. The next article is MP index reduction under the NDA flawed. NDA is flawed. Samuel Johnson, a profound literary critic and a essayist, wrote, "Poverty is a great enemy to human happiness. It certainly destroys liberty and it makes some virtues impracticable and others extremely difficult. In sharp contrast, conventional measures of property in terms of income are limited and narrowly focused on scarcity of resources to eke out a bare subsistence. But there is much more to poverty than a bare subsistence, as emphasized by Johnson and others. Nobel laureate Amartya Sen pioneered a rich, innovative, and broader perspective on well-being, focusing on capabilities and functioning reflect achievements and ability to live a healthy life. For example, is not necessarily related to affluence, as it could result in obesity and vulnerability to non-communicable diseases. Achievements such as being healthy, on the other hand, require a nourishing diet and physical exercise. Professor Sen has, however, resisted aggregation of concepts such as capabilities into an overall measure of well-being, as he believes that each capability is important in itself. The MPI story. Unfortunately, the United Nations Development Programme (UNDP) seized upon capabilities to construct an overall measure of human development with uniform weight of the three component health, education, and standard of living and their sub indices. Following this methodology, Niti Aayog and the UNDP released recently a national Multidimensional Poverty Index (MPIA) Progress Review 2023, also replicated in the UNDP report, making our future new directions for human development in Asia and the Pacific, released on November 7, 2023. Hence, these reports suffer from the same flaws as the UNDP Human Development Index aggregation with uniform weighting, but the MPI story is further distorted as elaborated on below. Astonishingly, the MPI 2023 estimates show a near having near halving of India's national MPI value and a decline from 24.85% to 14.96% between 2015-16 and 2019-21. This reduction of 9.89 percentage points implies that about 135.5 million people have excited poverty between 2015-16 and 1921. Besides the intensity of poverty, which measures the average deprivation among the people living in multidimensional property, reduced from 47.14% to 44.39%. But these estimates, especially the rapid reduction in MPI, cannot be taken as the face value for various reasons. Indeed, these are misleading and ill-informed. First, the MPI releases upon National Family Health Survey NFHS 4 and 5, which are not detailed enough for its estimation. Moreover, NFHS 5 is blocked as its estimate of open defecation contradicted exaggerated officials' claims of its complete elimination. In fact, an eminent demographer who led NFHS 5 was suspended intriguingly while the survey was blocked for its alleged unreliability. Niti Aayog and the UNDP had no qualms about using it. Ideally, NFHS 4 and 5 should have been combined with the 75th round of the NSS on the household consumption expenditure. Unfortunately, this was abandoned too, as leaked poverty estimates indicate a rise. What casts further doubt is the havoc caused by COVID-19 pandemic in 2020-21. Millions lost their livelihood, thousands died in reverse migration and from the lack of access to vaccines and medical cares. In fact, as a consequence of this epidemic, there was a huge economic shock from which the Indian economy has been struggling to recover. To illustrate, GDP growth has declined from 8% in 2015-16 to 3.78% in 2019-20 and has slumped 6.60 in 2020-21. As also, per capita income, not just bare subsistence, turned into a daunting challenge for millions, but equally seriously, public funding for maintenance and expansion of health and education and social safety net suffered an irreparable blow. But since income decreased drastically, MPI spiked. The next in order of importance is urban location. A 1% increase in urban location results in a 0.90% increase in MPI. This is not surprising as rural-urban migration is associated with a growth of slums and subhuman living conditions. However, reverse migration during COVID-19 may explain why the effect on MPI is the less than proportionate. Both healthcare and education expenditure are associated with lower MPI. The elasticity of the latter is higher in absolute value, implying that a 1% increase in the latter reduces MPI more than the same increase in the former. As state level estimates suggest a decline in educational expenditure, a rise in MPI is likely. Although state-level health expenditure rose to combat of COVID-19, it fell far short of what was needed. If the share of members of parliament with criminal cases in the total state MPs exceeded 20%, the higher was the MPI. This is not surprising as criminal members of the Legislative Assembly and MPs are notoriously corrupt and siphon of funds allocated for social safety nets and area development programs. Indeed, what is alarming is their rising share. 24% of the winners in the Lok Sabha election in 2004 had a criminal background. It rose to 30% in the 2009 general election, 34% in the 2014 election, and 43% in the 2019 election. If we go by our estimates of MPI, the reduction between 2015 and 2019-21 is considerably lower than the official estimate, 4.7 percentage point compared with the 9.89 percentage points. Our selective review of MPI estimates shows that the poverty rose in India's most populous state, Uttar Pradesh, by over 7 percentage point. Of the states that went to the election in November: Chhattisgarh, Madhya Pradesh, Mizoram, Rajasthan and Telangana. We find that the MPI fell in Chhattisgarh by over 6 percentage point, in Rajasthan by 2 percentage point, and most strikingly in Madhya Pradesh by about 8 percentage point. In conclusion, not only does the MPI exaggerate the NDS's success in fighting deprivation, but also perhaps more seriously obfuscate conventional measures of it, which may unravel a contradictory story of poverty. Then next was navigating the US-China relationship. The US President Joe Biden and his Chinese counterpart Xi Jinping had a summit there second in Francisco on November 15 on the sidelines of the Asia Pacific Economic Cooperation Conference. Their aim was to resurrect a bilateral relationship that is now at its lowest point since Washington and Beijing established diplomatic ties in 1979. What did the meet accomplish? The most consequential outcome was the decision to restore military-to-military communication between the two nuclear weapon states, critical to prevent potentially catastrophic miscalculations. The respective defense forces will now resume regular exchange of information under the Military Maritime Consultative Agreement that stated in 1998. These channels were closed after Nancy Pelosi's, the then Speaker of the U.S. House of Representatives, controversial visit to Taiwan in August 2022. The first visit by a speaker in 25 years, a self-ruled island state, Taiwan's status remained a bone of contention between the world's biggest superpowers, with China pursuing the goal of its reunification into the mainland under the One China policy. Washington accepts Beijing as the only legitimate government of China and acknowledges but does not endorse Taiwan as part of the country and provides concrete security guarantees under the Taiwan Relations Act. President Biden has on several occasions pledged that US would intervene if China attacked Taiwan. Beijing condemned Mrs. Pelosi's travel as constituting a serious violation of status quo. President Xi, who has often asserted his resolve to reunify the island with the motherland, warned his counterpart that Washington was playing with fire. Beijing vented its ire by firing ballistic missiles off the Taiwan coast and conducted military drills as a deterrence exercise, even as Mrs. Pelosi went ahead with her program. More recently, House Speaker Kevin McCarthy received the Taiwan's President Tsai Ing-wen in April in California, the highest American official to do so on U.S. soil. Where does the trade dispute stand? Amid this hostile political environment, business from the world's two biggest economies are having to navigate an equally volatile economic and trade policy framework within mothers of his ascent to the White House. President Biden issued an executive order in June 2021 blacklisting 59 defense and surveillance companies under the so-called Chinese military-industrial complex. This is in addition to the Trump administration blacklisting in 2019 of several Chinese artificial intelligence startups for alleged human rights abuse in Xinjiang. More specially, Washington and Beijing are leveraging their own areas of strength to inflict maximum damage on the other. A case in point is shipping controls to controls the Biden administration enacted in October 2022, further extended in October 2023 on exports of advanced computer chips for manufacturer of semiconductor. The curbs bar US and the non-US firms whose products contain American technology for supplying hardware and software to specific Chinese companies, besides prohibiting American citizens and firms from collaborating with Chinese chip makers except under special permission. The rationale behind the export bans is to undercut Beijing's strides in AI and supercomputers, which have powered its supersonic and nuclear weapon capability, which Washington viewed as detrimental to its security interests. On top of the plan on tech exports comes the executive order Biden issued in August prohibiting U.S. investments in the high-tech arena. China has hit back in kind, claim, clamping a ban in July on gallium and germanium Germanium exports, raw material used in the production of microchips and weapon systems. These are the items listed in the US inventory of material critical for economic and national security. Additionally, curbs were imposed in October on exports of various types of graphite, a vital mineral for production of electric vehicle batteries, where China enjoys dominance in the globally supply chain. The government further tightened and its anti-espionage and data protection laws on the ground of strengthening national security, forcing firms to designate for China a digital tools set of China-specific emails IDs and have and hive of country-exclusive servers. What is the way forward? The escalation of the bilateral dispute was epitomized in the muscular approach that the US adopted to shore up global hegemony during the Trump presidency, and conversely, China's quest for world military and technological supremacy that has crystallized under President Xi. The contours of this conflict have not fundamentally altered under President Biden's leadership, but a slight dose of realism seems to have been infused into Navigating this complex relationship, there is in evidence a greater accent on exploring pragmatic avenues of coexistence through de-risking the two company economies rather than disengagement or decoupling. This is a subtle but significant shift, and the only hope is the short terms that the superpowers will climb down from their hard positions. The next is the role of Special Inquiry Committee of Parliament. The Ethics Committee of Lok Sabha is believed to have recommended the exclusion of a Trinamool Congress Member of Parliament MP Mahua Moitra from the Lok Sabha for her unethical conduct and breach of privileges. This follows the Ethics Committee examining the complaints which accused her of asking questions to target a business house at the behest of a businessman in the exchange for cash. She was also accused of sharing her login credential in with the businessman. What is the role of ethics committee? The ethics committee was constituted in 2000 to oversee the moral and ethical conduct of members and examine cases of unethical conduct referred to it. The committee examines complaint filed against a member of the house by other members, outsiders, through a member to or referred by the speaker. The committee makes a prima facie inquiry before deciding to examine a complaint and present its report to the speaker who places it before the house for considerations. It must be noted that the term unethical is not defined. It is left to the committee to decide whether any act is unethical or not. In 2007, an MP accompanying his close female companion, impersonating her as his wife, was considered unethical by the committee. It recommended suspension of the MP from 30 sitting of the House. What are privileges committee? The privileges committee or special inquiry committee examines the more serious accusations against a member. In 1951, a special committee found a member guilty for promoting a business interest by putting questions in return for financial benefit. It was again a special committee that inquired into the cash for query scam of 2005, where 10 MPs of Lok Sabha were recommended for exclusion. Is an expulsion constitutional? The Constitution under Article 101 lists down the ground for vacation of a seat by an MP. It includes voluntary resignations, disqualification, and continuous absence from the House for 60 sittings. Exclusion is not mentioned explicitly in the Constitution. However, the Supreme Court has provided conflicting judgments in this regard. In Raja Rampal versus Honorable Speaker 2007, it upheld the power of Parliament to expel its member for breach of privilege by interpreting Article 101 to include explosion as a ground. But in Amarinder Singh versus Special Committee Punjab Vidhan Sabha 2010, the Supreme Court held expulsion by the State Assembly and unconstitutional. It held that such scenarios would frustrate the objective of the parliamentary democracy. How to reconcile privileges of the House and democratic representations? The allegations of cash for query against Mohua Moitra are serious in nature. However, can expulsion for such action be viewed as a disproportionate punishment? Further, the citizens of the constituency would be left without a representative till next election or a by-election. The privilege of House developed in medical Britain to protect the House of Commons from an authoritarian king, it is important to preserve the dignity and privilege of the House. It is equally imperative, if not more in a modern democracy, to ensure that the democratic representation is not prejudiced for political reasons. It must be noted that parliamentary committee proceedings are not as detailed as the judicial case that is conducted as per the Evidence Act. Even in this case, the Ethics Committee is believed to have recommended a legal inquiry, and the CBI has already registered a preliminary inquiry. It would be prudent to set up fast-track courts to conduct trials for such cases in a time-bound manner of, say, 60 days. If they are convicted in such a trial, it would result in their disqualification under the Representation of People Act 1951. Otherwise, they should continue to be a member of a House. The writer is a former IAS officer and author of the book of Politics Simplified. Views expressed are personal. The next article है an experiment in education at the grassroots levels in Bangladesh. In her book on Equal, Why India lags behind its neighbors, academic and activist Swati Narayan argues that India is in the grip of systematic and at times barbaric inequalities, and Narayan undertook a 5-year study across 4 countries, India, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka and Nepal. She found that even poorer neighbors were doing better than some Indian states on range of social indicators like health, education, nutrition, and sanitation. An expert Bangladesh preschool teacher Sahin was only 26, but she was a dynamo brimming with energy, married at the age of 15. Despite all odds, she had completed her studies. Her preschool students were able to read better than even second grade students we had met in nearby schools. Sahin employed a range of innovative teaching aids, including picture card, and abacus. She showed her students multiple picture cards and combined different words phonetically, making it easier for them to grasp. Most importantly, her studies understood the meaning of every word they read, not only in Bengali but in English too. She was using a learning method called the Kajoli Early Childhood Education Model. This asbestos roofed classroom with bamboo walls, virtually no ventilation, and little sunlight was buzzing with activity and joy. In Bangladesh, the government does not run pre-primary schools. Across the country, there are numerous such learning centers operated largely by NGOs, including BRAC, earlier called the Bangladesh Rehabilitation Assistant Committee. Most of them use different techniques of joyful learning. The Kojoli model is based on play and pure learning. Collective financing. Since inspiring early childhood education center was financed collectively, the mothers committee of the village pooled money to pay her a modest honorarium. The school ran for only 3 hours a day, and the mothers brought khichuri, a mixture of rice and lentils cooked together, often called Hathpuch in Dhaka, by rotation for all the children to eat together. The young teacher was ambitious about the future of her young students. You cannot expect all 5 fingers of the hand to be the same, but I do hope that for some children who are intelligent, I am able to show them the right way, and for those who are laggards, it is my job to bring them ahead. A few days ago, I asked the children what is their aspirations were. One girl wanted to be a female police officer and did disum boxing moves. Another wanted to be a doctor, and the third a teacher. My students are so smart that the primary school teacher had to conduct a lottery to decide whom to give the most marks to, as she was flunked with their calibre. Creating readers. Most people are equally astonished when they see my survey results. Almost 90% of the students in grade 5 whom we tested across 20 villages in Panchagraha were able to read at least a grade 2 level paragraph in Bengali. Even in Nepal, nearly two-thirds of the students were tested in grade 5 were equally competent, but in the two Bihar district, less than half the students could read as fluently. These results for Bihar were nearly identical to those in annual status of education report that the NGO Pratham has been preparing for the last decade in India for the first time with the same essay. Told my survey tested children's learning levels across borders. The results were crystal clear. Bangladeshi children were strikingly ahead. In Bihar, amongst the children were tested, those from the more affluent families scored markedly better than those from the poorer ones. Poorer children had less than half the learning competencies. This inequality is largely due to the additional money that wealthier families spend on private schools and private tuitions. In contrast, family income did not influence learning levels in Nepal even better. The Bangladesh district had a high progressive ratio with the pupils from the poorest families turning out to be better learners than the wealthiest. Competent and dedicated teachers trained in joyful learning techniques, timely availability of textbooks, scholarship for poor and female students, as well as the Bengali cultural emphasis on education are all important factor in Bangladesh education success. In contrast, the repeated complaint of the parents were made in Bihar was that despite good intention, Chief Minister Nitish Kumar's degree lao nokri paoge degree and get job scheme to recruit local teachers and en masses had boomeranged and worsened the equality of education. Many upper caste teachers with fake degree had aspired these plums jobs but were obviously unable to teach in the classroom. Signs of decay. In school after school in Bihar, we noticed a clear signs of decay. In one government school, we saw two teachers in crisp saris sitting behind a wooden desk side by side in the same classroom. They were apparently trying to simultaneously teach two different grades of students who sat on the floor in rows in front of them in another dimly lit classroom. Possibly due to our presence, the teachers pretended to make the children read in the darkness. Many students across schools also confide in us that their teachers are beat them mercilessly, even though corporal punishment is strictly against the law. In Bihar, we noticed that many children were officially enrolled in government schools but did not attend class. A recent 2023 post-pandemic survey by the Jan Jagran Shakti Sangathan found that the government primary school in North Bihar only 23% of the children enrolled were present and dismally concluded that schools in Bihar seems to be in danger of mass displacement by private coaching centers. My survey also confirmed that 82% of students enrolled in private schools and 44% in government schools also went for several hours of private tuitions. On the other hand, in Bangladesh, on an average, only 35% and in Nepal, only 29% of students paid for extra tuition. In fact, the draft Bangladeshi Education Act that has been under debate for the last decade proposes an absolute ban on all private coaching centers, private tuition, and even on the publication of guidebooks. The next article, India reminds Myanmar to return to federal democracy. A conflict intensifies between Ahmed resistance group and the Myanmar military in Shan and Saging province, India on Wednesday reminded Myanmar to return to the path of federal democracy. The message was delivered by Foreign Secretary Binoy Mohan Quatra, who had a Foreign Office consultation with a Myanmar Myanmar is a delegation led by the Deputy Foreign Minister of Myanmar, Lwin O. A transition, both sides held a discussion on a wide range of issues covering the situation along the border, security, trade, commerce, and connectivity, status of bilateral development projects in Myanmar, and concerns related to transnational crimes. The Indian side reiterated its support to Myanmar for a transition towards a federal democracy, said a press note from the Ministry of External Affairs on Wednesday. Myanmar's military has been battling armed insurgents who have forced it out of several townships over the past few weeks. Following intense fighting, thousands of Myanmarese nationals, including former military personnel, recently sought refuge in India. Deep concern, the official spokesperson of Military of External Affairs, Arindam Bagchi, expressed deep concern over the conflict. About Wednesday's discussion, Mr. Bagchi said the two sides discussed the security situation, border management, and transnational crimes. Support to continue. The Indian side said it continued to support people-centric socio-economic developmental projects, including connectivity projects and projects under the Rakhine State Development Program and the Border Area Development Program for the benefit of the people of Myanmar, the MEA said. The next important article जो है गरबा डांस ऑफ गुजरात makes it to UNESCO list. Gujarat's traditional dance from Garba was on Wednesday included in the list of intangible cultural heritage by the United Nations Educational, Scientific and Cultural Organization UNESCO. The popular dance from the 15th century, from 15th cultural items from Indian to make it to the UNESCO list. Kolkata's Durga Puja was the last one added 2 years ago. Inclusion has been made under the provision of the 2003 Convention for the Safeguarding of Intangible Cultural Heritage. The international cultural body described the Garba as a ritualistic and devotional dance performed in India. Food prices likely shot up in November. The cost of typical vegetarian food plate in India surged by 10% in November on a month-on-month basis owing to rising onion and tomato prices, while the price of non-vegetarian meal rose 5% over October. Crucial Market Intelligence and Analytics said in its monthly report on food prices on Wednesday, coming ahead of the official retail inflation numbers expected next week. The report assumes a significance in as it is suggested food inflation may have hardened in November. In October, even as the overall retail inflation eased to a 4-month low of 4.87%, food costs for households were virtually unchanged from September at 6.6%. The average vegetarian meal cost were a 3-month high of 30.3 rupees in November, as per the report, which calculates prices based on input cost. Compared with November 2022, vegetarian food plates cost 9% higher last month, and the prices were flat for non-vegetarian meals. The uptick was attributable to a substantial 58% and a 35% on month increase in onion and tomato prices, respectively, prompted by festive demand and a lower output in the Kharif seasons due to erratic rainfall conditions. The research firm said, but union prices were not the only trigger, as the cost of pulses, whose swing has been lower than last year in this Kharif season, surged 21% higher than the 18.8% uptick recorded in the official consumer price inflation data for October. The cost of non-vegetarian plate increased at a slower pace than that of a vegetarian plate because of a marginal 1% 3% decline in the price of broiler, which account for about 50% of a non-vegetarian food cost, the FAB's analyst reckoned. Then next जो है, who is responsible for farming impact on the environment? The ever-increasing demand for agricultural products is leading to significant social and environmental consequences worldwide. The expansion of international trade has created global supply chains directly linking consumers to geographically distant impacts, including carbon emission, biodiversity loss, freshwater depletion, soil degradation, and labor rights issues, all of which have local, regional, and global relevance. Due to its vast size and consumer market, India is a global anchor of the trade in agricultural products. It has also undergone remarkable social and economic development over the last several decades. This has led to an increasing demand as well as supply of these products. Large land areas in India are used to service the international demand for grain, fruit, and vegetables, among other products, which put pressure on national soil and water resources. At the same time, India's vast consumer market means that the large amount of land, even outside its border, are used to satisfy domestic demand. Then food-based impact accounting. The expansion of such imports has contributed to increasing the environmental pressure in the exporting countries. Recent studies have shown that a substantial share of the total ecological impact is due to displacement of environmental damage through international trade. Tackling this demand-supply dynamics is now a key aspect of international environmental governance and represents a great challenge in achieving the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals and other climate action and biodiversity conservation goals. The current paradigm in measuring impact and allocating responsibility is based on a production-based accounting methods. It measures impact in the place where the products are produced. There are concerns about its limitations in managing leaks, fixing accountability, and ensuring equity and justice among producers and consumers. One alternative that has emerged is consumption-based accounting. Consumption-based accounting Consumption-based accounting accounts for impact at the point of consumption, attributing all the social and environmental impact that occurred during production and trade to the final products and to the eventual consumers. That is, the approach urges the consumer, whether social groups or countries, to accept responsibilities for the embodied or virtual impact of the product that is being consumed. This approach has become prominent thanks to growing concerns around the divide between countries that are producer and those are the consumers, leading to a high degree of international co-dependence. The approach has also sparked all calls to adopt sustainable consumption practices as a form of environmental actions. This has important implications for the coverage of impact and to determine who has primary responsibility to act. What is the demand perspective? From a demand perspective, the basics for this approach is straightforward since the pressure on natural and human resources is largely direct result of consumption practices in developed economies. The responsibilities for any consequences due to the production process should fall on those consumers as well. This also reflects arguments of equity and justice surrounding the issue of historical responsibility. Studies suggest that developing economies like India have contributed only 23% of global cumulative emissions and are responsible for about 20 to 40% of global average temperature rise since the pre-industrial era. So the approach acts to further decouple population and emission by shifting substantial impact from the emerging market like India to the most less populous economically developed countries. A consumption-based approach thus highlights the responsibility of industrialized states to mitigate impact and the rights of developing countries. Developing economies to not carry an excessive burden. This is an extension of the principle of common but differentiated responsibility that make up global climate governance. This approach also accounts for a growing element of international trade that the existence of trilateral supply chains where products are produced in one country, processed in a second country, are consumed in a third country. By tracing the flow of intermediate and final products through a global supply chain, it can establish links between where the product is eventually consumed and where it is its environmental impact manifesting. What is the supply perspective? From a supply perspective, the proponent of consumption-based accounting claims that it can encourage cleaner production since producer countries are implicitly encouraged to implement strategies that lower the environmental footprints of their exports. They also have an incentive to raise the living standard of actors in agricultural supply chains to safeguard their access to foreign markets. The approach can also go a long way to fix leaks in production system where production is often taken to jurisdictions that are relatively lenient about production standards, including India. Benefits of environmental actions. The application of this approach to estimate carbon emissions in the form of embodied emissions and water use in the form of virtual water has also been around the scientific literature for some time but has only recently made inroads into policy making. For example, the European Commission recently initiated steps to ensure products consumed in the European Union have not contributed to deforestation in their country of origin. This measure is expected to significantly reduce carbon emissions from deforestation as well as biodiversity loss. Since the European Union is a major consumer of agricultural and forestry products, even from the consumption-based accounting perspective, India finds itself in a unique position. Currently, a major developed economies have an environmental footprint in India because of their consumption of Indian agricultural produce. Conversely, India's own deforestation footprint outside its borders has increased over the last 2 decades and is rapidly growing even if it remains below that of several G20 countries on a per capita basis. If the environmental impact of our consumption are outside our border, it is easy to not consider them at all since they are not our problem, but the impacts abroad are an outcome of our demand, so we should be accepting a part of the responsibility. Fair impact attributions. Since consumption-based emissions accounting can identify the consequences of domestic and foreign demand for agricultural product, it may also be able to facilitate an agreement on global environmental action based on producer and consumer sharing responsibilities. Current agreements are hampered by a lack of agreement on the historical and current role of developed and developing economies in the climate pollution and biodiversity loss crisis. Having developed economies take responsibilities for some of the impact presents an opportunity for coordinated actions while allowing developing economies like India the space to grow and improve their agricultural system. Finally, consumption-based accounting is not easy to implement thanks to liability, monitoring, and compliance concerns, but it is useful especially as a tool to voluntarily diagnose impact-intensive consumer consumption patterns. This approach can be applied domestically as well as since it helps shift focus from producer to consumers and encourages individuals and collective changes in consumption behavior. Then आज का जो लास्ट आर्टिकल है climate change is making the world sick. Heat stress, lung damage from wildfire smoke, the spread of disease-carrying mosquitoes into new regions as the temperature rise. These are just some ways public health has been compromised by climate change. A focus for the first time ever at the annual UN Climate Summit. COP28 government ministers are expected to discuss ways they can put product protect people from climate-driven health threats which now threaten to undo decades of progress in public health. From 2030, experts expect that malnutrition, malaria, and dengue, diarrhea, and heat stress will push global death tolls up by 250,000 per year, according to the World Health Organization. Mosquitoes that carry various viruses, including dengue, malaria, West Nile, and Zika, are shifting into the new parts of the world as warmer temperature and heavy rains create more hospitable conditions for them to breed. Reported dengue cases have grown from around half a million in 2000 to more than 5 million in 2019, according to WHO. Climate change is also having an unpredictable impact on malaria, with 5 million more cases registered in 2022 than the previous year. The WHO's World Malaria Report found floods in Pakistan last year, for example, led a 400% increase in malaria cases in the country. The report said the disease has also spread into the highlands of Africa that previously had been too cold for mosquitoes. Similarly, after decades of progress against cholera and intestinal infections spread by contaminated food and water, case numbers are rising again, including in countries that had all but extirpated the disease. In 2022, the 25% more in countries reported cholera cases over 2020-2021, according to the WHO, which noted the role played by cyclones, floods, and drought in cutting off access to clean water and helping bacteria thrive. Diarrhea also receives a boost from climate change via increasingly erratic rainfalls. It is the world's second leading cause of death among the children under 5, claiming the lives of more than half a million kids every year. Heat stress is projected to impact hundreds of millions of people as temperature continue to climb through the next few decades, with the world already about 1.1 degrees centigrade warmer than the average pre-industrial temperature. People in 2022 experienced about 86 days on the average of dangerously high temperature. A report from the Lancet Medical Journal found if the world warms by 2 degrees centigrade above pre-industrial levels, the report said yearly heat death could more than the quadruple. The heat has also made forest drier, fueling extreme wildfires that have swept across large swaths of the world in the recent years. So friends, this is all for today, and we will meet from tomorrow onwards with new news articles from the Hindu newspaper which are relevant from UPSC perspectives. So thank you. Thanks a lot.